Welcome, friends. This is Jim Cantelon Today Television. This is Bible teaching for the 21st century. So happy to have you with us, friends. It's a quick half hour, and it's chock full. Just in a few moments, I'm going to be interviewing Rod Hembree, who's well known to so many of you as the host of the very well-known Christian television show called Quick Study. And we're just going to have a casual conversation. You're going to love it. And then after that, we'll be getting into our study through Matthew. Believe it or not, we're in chapter 19. Can't believe it. So you hang in there. I'll be back with Rod Hembree right after this.
The work of the Word of God is stunningly remarkable. We must understand that God has placed His life codes of salvation and healing in the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jim Cantelon is focused on the messages that God has communicated through the Bible to you and me. Today, it's more important for us now that we learn what God is saying to us. God has placed us here now to be examples and to share the good news of His work with the world today. If you've heard the divine mind speak to you through this program, then God has worked in amazing ways to reveal His Word. Remember that this program has cost, and we have been faithful to God to bring this program to you. If you want to give an offering in any amount, we would appreciate it. Send to Jim Cantelon Today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. Or call us at 519-415-8341. Or simply visit jimcantelontoday.com.
As I mentioned a moment ago, Rod Hembree is my guest today and through every Sunday of this month. A man with a tremendous story and history, and a lot of you have followed Rod Hembree for years and years on television. Rod, you don't look old enough, but you've been at this quick study ministry for 27 years.
Time goes fast, Jim. It really does.
Most of our viewers would not be up to speed on the history of quick study. They may watch it faithfully. Tell us a bit about its genesis.
In 1990, George Bush Sr. Declared that the year of the Bible.
Yeah.
And my father there was some trouble in our family. My father had come off of something that was very difficult. And he was recouping his life, and he asked the Lord to help him. And so when he did that, George Bush said, "This is the year of the Bible." Dad said, "Well, I decided to check with Christian stations and see if they had a program that took people through the Bible." He checked, and no one did.
Come on.
No one had a program from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. No one had a program.
Really?
No one. So he decided he would do that. So he called it Project 90. So late 89, he decided to do it. He got on the air with Cornerstone Television.
That's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And he decided, well, we're going to have one. So he started teaching through the Bible from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22. Got halfway through the year, and people started calling him and saying, "Ron, this is great. What are we going to do next year?"
Yeah.
And my dad hadn't thought about, continuing.
Right.
He said, so I just decided, well, we'll continue. At that point, he decided to move to Phoenix, Arizona, and start the program outside of the station. It was a good relationship with the station, all that, but he wanted to expand it to other stations because they had expanded to 2 or 3 stations. So he went to Phoenix, Arizona, and he hired a guy to do his production, but it was really a challenge because the guy didn't seem to understand everything, and so he called me. I was working at 100 Huntley Street.
Well, I remember that's where you and I first met. You were,
Yeah.
you were the senior producer of 100 Huntley Street.
I
at the time.
was.
I was just back from Israel.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, Dad, what do you want?" He said, "Well, can you do the program for me?" And I thought, well, I'm already doing a program. And he said, "I know, but can I come up there and record it when you're not recording 100 Huntley Street?" So I talked to David Maines. What an amazing man David was. And he said, "Sure, tell him he can come up here and record it." So we started recording in 1991 early 91, a program that was called, well, originally it was called Project 90, but then we had to change it. We changed it to Life Lessons. When we changed it to Life Lessons, we held that for about 6 years because there was a company out in the west coast of Canada that was a educational company, and they had a Life Lessons. So we had to change it from that point to Quick Study. But that's how it started. And, you know, Dad would come up and we'd tape over a course of 3 days, and that would be for the month. And then he'd go back and we'd distribute the programs. That's how it started.
Now, your father died, how many years ago now? Was it 7?
He died in 2010.
2010, so 8 years ago.
June,
and very suddenly. He was just, what, 72 at the time?
He was 72 at the time, and the doctors we'd gone through a lot of time and space and got our own studio and did a whole bunch of things. But 2010 was an interesting time because Dad had a full account of health. You know, the doctor said, "You're healthy, Ron, you're going to be good." So I figured Dad would be until he's 100 years old, 200 years old, my goodness. And because he was always energetic and everything. And but in the last couple of months, really around April, really around March, April, and May, he started to struggle with his legs and all that stuff. And so he was kind of struggling with that. But he said to me, we had a meeting down in the States in the month of May, and he said to me, "Rod," and we're sitting around with, you know, the people from Quick Study, and I'm just sitting there, you know, because it's a normal meeting, and I'm just listening, and all of a sudden my dad said, "Rod," I said, "Yes." He said, "If something happens to me, will you continue with the ministry?" And I said, "Well, I can't believe you asked me that." And he was serious. Everybody was looking at him, including me, and I said, "Of course I'll continue with the ministry, Dad. I've been with you all this time, but nothing's going to happen to you." That was May. "Nothing's going to happen to you." And he said that, and he made me repeat it 2 or 3 times. And he started crying, and I couldn't believe he was crying. I was like, "Okay, well, this is serious." I said, "Yeah, Dad, don't worry about it. I'm going to continue the ministry." And then we recovered, and we went on with the meeting. 1 month later, we're down there taping the Quick Study television program. And he taped in June for July. He taped his parts of July, the teaching and all that. And he was leaving, and we were going to tape our part. You know, my wife and myself. We're going to tape a couple of segments and tape the rest the next day. As he's leaving, he stops in the driveway. We're taping outside, and he stops in the driveway, and he turns around, and Janice and I are waiting for the cameras. And in front of everybody, the crew and everybody, he looks at me and he says, "I love you, son." And I said, "Okay, I'll see you later, Dad." Those are my last words to my dad. Those are his last words to me. His last words were, "I love you, son." My last words to him were, "I'll see you later,
See you
Dad."
later, Dad. Yeah.
I never had any realization of how true that was. And 3 hours later, he was eating dinner, and he passed away. Suddenly, within 3 seconds, he had a clean bill of health, and the doctors couldn't believe it. And they couldn't really find anything wrong with him, so they said he just stopped breathing. And he was at the dinner table, and the kids were playing around, and I was eating down I was at a hotel, so I was eating down in the city, and that's fine. And he just stood up and he said, "Kathy, I think I'm having some trouble." And then he sat down, and that was it.
Wow.
That was it.
Your dad was, you know, and it's certainly no news to you. He was one of the finest, most significant, and faithful Bible teachers I think that, you know, Christian television has seen in the last 50 years. A man of great integrity and outstanding biblical expertise, and a heart for God and a heart for God's people. What was it like for you emerging out of the shadow of Ron Hembree?
I had trouble in the shadow of my dad, and I struggled with that a lot. And the Lord had really given me peace. He had said, "I want you to settle down, and I want you to focus. I want you to be the number 2 guy and do a really good job at that." So I had focus, but I struggled with the idea of my dad being number 1 because I felt I needed to teach, but I couldn't teach for years this way.
So he was doing the teaching segment.
He was doing the teaching segment. I was just doing the introduction and the follow-up segments, you know, 3 minutes and 3 minutes, and he was doing the main teaching. And no problem, no problem.
Dad had given me the weekend show. He said, do the weekend show, and it was called The Walk. And I said, sure, I'll do the weekend show. And so my daughter and myself, we did that show. And but I certainly didn't expect this death. But anyway, what happened was I got to peace with that. And I was really good. The Lord helped me. And I was like solid. And okay, Dad. And Dad was really great. He was an awesome guy. Yeah. And he worked with me and all that stuff, but we were at peace. Yeah. And when we were at peace for about a year, that was, 2009, and it was 2010 that he died. Yeah. I was shocked.
The program, has been so faithful. 27 years, my goodness. Quick Study has become an institution. I don't know if you feel like an icon or not, but...
I don't know. I feel like, I'm not sure what I feel like. But.
Yeah, but it's so faithfully exposing the scriptures and people love it. Tell me a bit about the reach of Quick Study these days here in the 21st century. Who's seeing it and through what means are they seeing it?
Television has changed tremendously. Yeah. One of the things that we used to do, we would be on TV stations, and the TV stations would reach a lot of people. That's not the case today. Today is the internet and the TV stations, and there are devices like the Roku box and other things that have involved themselves with the internet on your TV set. That has opened up. The phones, about 38% of our people who watch on telephones. And the telephones have a good picture, and they hook their telephones up to the TV set and all that stuff. So really, it's about, to be honest with you, today it's about 50-50. 50% of the people are watching on TV, and 50% of the people are watching on phones and computers.
Yeah, with the television and smartphones and computers and so on, it's not a case of either or, is it? It's at both end. I mean, because people still do watch TV, but many people increasingly do not watch TV.
They don't. Well, they watch TV, but they don't watch TV like they used to watch TV.
Right.
And this is the challenge, because a lot of the networks today are moving into the internet and doing internet things because, most people are watching wherever they can get the programming. Yeah. They like a series and they'll watch a series, but that series might be on Netflix.
Yeah.
So that's what they'll do.
Your reach goes way beyond the USA and Canada, doesn't it?
It does, and that surprised me. And I was at an NRB conference.
National Religious Broadcasters.
And it was really interesting because the way that developed was, I went. I wasn't going to go. And because I thought, I'll let somebody else do it. And God really spoke to me about that. So I went quickly we had an award, and I picked up an award, and I went in. I was going to go out the next day. And I go out, and there was a snowstorm in Toronto, and I couldn't get home, and I had to stay there for another couple of days. And I said, okay, Lord, well, I had my guy come back and pick me up, so I stayed there. When I stayed there, I decided just to go down and mill around in the convention where they have all the places, and I saw a person, a Faith TV, which is a great network, by the way, out of South Africa, an amazing network. And he said to me, are you on our station? I said, no. He said, we want you on. I said, well, here's the problem. I don't have any money. He said, don't worry about it. Just come on our station. I said, every day? He said, every day. I said, okay. I did not realize that Faith TV covered all of Africa.
Right.
They covered all of Europe, and then they covered the Americans on the Dish network. I didn't realize that. We went on Faith TV, and suddenly the whole thing was amazing, because we were in Africa, we're on in Europe, we're on in Australia, and we're on in New Zealand. I got letters from New Zealand. I can't believe it. And reading through the Bible.
And with the internet, you're everywhere.
Everywhere.
As Thomas Friedman famously put it a few years ago, it's the Evernet. What an era we're living in. Well, Rod, I'm so happy you're with me today, and you'll be with me for the next 3 shows. And I want to continue where we left off, because there's much more to talk with Rod about than what you just heard, as fascinating as this has been. I'll be back with our Bible teaching segment right after this.
Remote and rural, these children and their families have no access to medical care. There is no clinic nearby. And when a mother is desperate to save her dying child, she will walk for many hours. Sometimes the child doesn't survive. So we go to them. These tables and chairs under the trees look like a gathering, not a medical clinic. But the doctors and nurses are transforming the lives of the children and their families. They provide primary medical care, classes on sanitation, medicines, and a better understanding of HIV and AIDS. Most of all, they bring hope as they diagnose, treat, and educate families. This clinic is a gift from donors that will transform their lives. You can become part of that transformation. Your gift of $25 will provide health care for an entire family. $100 provides care for 6 families. Be a part of real change. Go to wowmission.ca/saveachild.
So in Matthew 19, and I want to get right to it, it's on the screen. You can follow along as I read it. It came to pass when Jesus had finished these sayings that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond the Jordan. And great multitudes followed him, and he healed them there. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him, and saying to him, "Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason?" He answered and said to them, "Have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh? So then they're no longer two but one flesh. Therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate." They said to him, "Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?" He said to them, "Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. Whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." His disciples said to him, "If such is the case of the man with his wife, it's better not to marry." But he said to them, "All cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it has been given. For there are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who were made eunuchs by men. And there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He who is able to accept it, let him accept it." Whoa. A number of things can be said here. First of all, let's be clear that Jesus was not stereotypical as a teaching rabbi in his day. All you got to do is, you've been reading through Matthew with me here, you know already that he just seemed to be running in a countercultural way against the stream of, conventional and accepted religious thinking, and basically offending the religious establishment, almost without exception. Now, we have discovered, and we will continue to discover as we go through the Gospels over time with JCT, that there were always those, both within the Pharisees and even some of the Sadducees, who at least had a secret faith in Jesus. But generally speaking, the established religious order found him to be an obnoxious outsider, even while he was an Orthodox Jew. And so, as he was teaching and healing and performing the miraculous, and not just clusters, but literally thousands of people would swarm around him as he walked. He didn't have a bus. He walked, through the region of the Galilee, with the epicenter being Capernaum, his adopted hometown. He was a phenom. And, these Pharisees, were just everyday religious guys, and they couldn't understand, where he got his power from, where he got his authority from. And because he didn't conform to the oral law and the oral traditions of the fathers, they found him not just offensive, but a fraud. So they were constantly testing him, trying to come up with trick questions to throw him off and to reveal his fraudulent persona to the people. So they thought. Well, here's one of those trick questions. Is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any just reason? Now, here's something that maybe you don't know. Maybe you do. It's certainly not knowledge that's unique to me. But during Jesus' day, there were two prominent rabbis, and there were schools of disciples and of thought that aligned itself and themselves with him. One was Hillel, who was a Hellenistic, that means Greek-influenced, liberal rabbi. The other was Shammai, who was a very strict, legalistic rabbi. And you know, there's very little new under the sun. I mean, to this day, you've got liberal and conservative, and the great gulf fixed between them. You see it in terms of every kind of human organization or institution. You see it in the United States with Republicans who are seen as conservatives, and Democrats are seen as liberal. It seems that it's ever thus. There's always this conservative-liberal divide. Well, with Shammai, it was doctrine. You do not divorce a woman except for sexual unfaithfulness. With the school of Hillel, you could divorce your wife for any reason. She burned the toast. Another woman's come along who's more attractive. You're bored. You're tired of her. Divorce her. She was like so much property. Get rid of her. And so when the trick question is asked, you know, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? What they were saying is, which of these rabbis do you follow? What school of thought are you a part of? Are you liberal or are you conservative? Now, Jesus, of course, refused in every instance, and this was not the only trick question that was thrown at him, refused in every instance to be, you know, cornered into a given either theological or political subculture. So he says, look, it's God who created men and women, all right? Let's get that straight. Have you not read, he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? That's a no-brainer, okay? And the implication of the next sentence, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother, be joined to his wife, joined referring to sexual intercourse, meaning that God created man and woman to be joined together. I mean, you know, a sexual union is God's invention. It's not something that mankind has come up with to mess up, you know, the moral scheme of things. But then he says something here. In that union, that sexual union, there's a union or unity of flesh. It's like at that point in time, they are joined together, not just physically, but there's some kind of a spiritual bond that it's almost like the one soul then inhabits both bodies. You know, I'm just trying to help us get our heads around this. So they're no longer two but one, he says in verse 6. And because God created men and women to be joined together, he had something in mind. It wasn't just a case of them becoming one flesh, but they produce one flesh. That's the implication of what he's saying here. They have a child. And that child has a unique DNA that shares that of the father and that of the mother. Okay? So then they follow up their trick question with this theological question. So why did Moses command to give a certificate of a divorce and to put her away? Moses, he says, because of the hardness of your hearts did this. But here's the thing. Jesus was taking a stand for women here. Moses saw it. Jesus saw it. Women being treated as chattel. No more with Moses. He says, look, no more can a man divorce you for any reason and then come back later and demand that you return as his wife. If he's divorced you, he's divorced you. Until Moses insisted on the certificate of divorce, it was a legal document, a woman had no recourse. The guy would come back and say, you're coming back with me, maybe dragging her by the hair. And she, no. I have this legal paper. And they had to respect that. So Moses was trying to protect the right and the status of women. Jesus is doing the same here. He said, okay, where there's sexual immorality, that kind of that can create, a breach in the contract or in the covenant that is irreparable. It doesn't always have to be, but it can be. But instead of this easy divorce, easy remarriage, easy divorce, easy remarriage, Jesus is basically declaring a high road above them all. But notice something he says here in verse 11, not everyone can accept this word, but only those to whom it has been given. And then at the end of verse 12, the one who can accept this should accept it. This is one of the few instances where Jesus kind of provided an open-ended closure, if there is such a thing as an open-ended closure. And so you got to make of it what you will, and let the Lord, by His Holy Spirit, give you His direction.
Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 2 is here. The focus of this book is Matthew chapters 5 through 7, the Sermon on the Mount, called the greatest sermon of all time. Gain background and insight into the Beatitudes, being salt and light, how to love your enemies, and the Lord's Prayer. We'd like you to have your copy of Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 2. If you're already a monthly partner, it will be sent out to you automatically in the next few weeks. If you would like to order Volume 2, you can do so by sending a gift in any amount. Call us at 519-415-8341 or write to Jim Cantelon today, P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7, or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com. Request Cantelon's Casual Commentary Volume 2 and it will be sent to you.
First of all, Rod Hembry's coordinates are right there on the bottom of the screen, and you want to read those and write them down and get in touch with Quick Study Television, Quick Study Internet. It's tremendous. Secondly, these commentaries, Cantelon's Casual Commentary, they're really moving. The third volume is ready. It's just going to the press, and it should be ready. You can order it, and it'll come to you as we go through the book of Matthew with a casual commentary. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Contact us. Jim Cantelon today. P.O. Box 989, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 3Y7. If you're sending a check, make it payable to Jim Cantelon today. Or visit us online at jimcantelontoday.com and click Support.